house.
スイート、私あなたを救えなかった。
And happy Halloween, trick or treat, all that wonderful stuff. Do you got any Halloween plans this year?
No, but I'll probably dress up as number 6 from The Prisoner again.
You know what? Yeah, and you do that. You look great in that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Excellent. For Narcotic Casserole, as you guys saw, we had a fantastic crossover with Review and Brew with their offerings. So I wanted to run the gamut with all my regular contributors so they can give me some of their favorites in horror. So what do you got today?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of horror.
Really?
Yeah. I love the Hellraiser series. I'm not sure why. I just do. But I don't enjoy being scared. It's not my thing.
Horror, and I've said this regarding comedies, there are two genres I feel that go hand in hand. The reason why horror and comedy always seem to go so well together is because they are the only two genres that are practically slave to the sensibilities of the viewer, because they're the two genres that have a whole load of subgenres. Well, comedy has, you got the wild slapstick, you've got the more subdued, more collective, more like Oscar Wilde kind of fare. And you always talk to people who say they prefer this type of comedy, that's what they find funny. Horror is very similar in the regards that there's different types of stuff that people find scary. There are people who are afraid of pain, who like the torture porn genre. There are people who just always are terrified of just regular things that make you feel like uneasy, like if you're being alone in a very ominous house. So that's why stuff like the original Haunting, or even to an extent House on Haunted Hill, and even The Exorcist to a grand extent, or The Shining. It's all about the foreboding atmosphere. So some people like the slow burn horror where they have this sense of this lack of ease about their familiar settings, that there's just something off about that just makes it feel uncomfortable. And then you've got the ones who just love madness all around. These are the people who love like the slashers, like the Friday the 13th movies.
It's a really interesting way of putting it. So I have a couple that I recommended, and we finally decided upon the rather strange 1977 Japanese flick, House.
As you know, I did a montage from Spooky Empire, and imagery from House actually was very prominent at that convention. There's a lot of actually, that particular poster actually shows up all over the place.
I'm not surprised.
To its credit, it stands out. That alone is freaky as hell. And
oh, you sweet summer child.
Yeah. And admittedly, there was a soupçon confusion because, as many people know, there is another popular horror film also called House, starring William Katt.
Yeah, I don't think they have anything to do with each other.
They have absolutely nothing to do. Well, William Katt alone pretty much invalidates that deal. No disrespect to William Katt, love you to death. He showed me the trailer, and that was the one that just stood out just for its foobar imagery.
Yeah, it's pretty batshit insane.
Your brand of batshit insane definitely fits well with my own. So
thank you.
Yeah.
The director came up with the idea of, he had some nephews, I believe, that were kids, 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So he went to them and said, okay, what do you think is scary? Which, on the surface, sounds like a good idea. Try to tap into primal fears.
Okay.
And things like that. Problem was, what 4-year-olds think are scary isn't necessarily scary. For example, and this is a bit of a spoiler, basically, on the wall in their house, there was a picture of a cat. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, they all thought it was scary. Why? I don't know. But they did. No, the cat doesn't look like this.
Okay.
It's just a picture of a cat. It's not scary.
That looks like a cat that got a hold of a joker fish.
Now, there are some genuinely creepy moments in it. The piano... that was pretty darn inspired, I thought. Now, I will also say that it was made in 1977. They apparently had a budget of $150. So, a lot of the special effects aren't very special, or they are very special depending on how you. So I almost in some ways hesitate to call it horror in some respects. That having been said, it's a very interesting mind trip, and I do enjoy it in a vague, awful way.
You're all over the place selling this to me, but
I know, because this movie is all over the place.
that's fine.
And I'll be honest, it's not a great film. I enjoy it, but it's not a great film.
well,
And it's a Criterion, I'll admit, but
so Houses for me will be a little out of my comfort zone because I don't actually get the chance to watch too many Japanese horror films, particularly one from this era. Mostly, I mean, really, Japanese horror didn't really come to my consciousness until The Ring came out, and then I went and watched Ringu after that. So this will be new for me. Right here. Cool. So hopefully this will be new for you guys too. This is House, but not with William Katt.
かからないわ。故障よ。
you're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta give them this. They discovered blue screen, and damn it, they were going to use it. They do know that white tends to reflect off the blue screen, and it kind of bleeds into it. But
No, I think they knew that.
it is a ghost story, most definitely, and it definitely wasn't so out there to the point where I did not get where it was going. I definitely caught it. The idea of a perpetually tormented spirit has pretty much manifested itself into the house, feeding on the young and the unmarried, waiting
Virgin.
so that way they can live on. So they, in waiting for a love that may never come. It's the whole tormented spirit, pretty much living in perpetual anguish over something they lost. Got that completely. Now, I've seen this example in a lot of horror films and even some episodes of Supernatural. I even recall an episode or two of even Doctor Who has tackled this to an extent.
Woman in Black.
The Woman in Black is a great example. But this is... The box said it was a Scooby-Doo episode by way of Mario Bava. I beg to differ. Honestly, with the color palette they were using, this was more of Dario Argento. This felt like Suspiria. I can definitely keep this as a horror film. I mean, after all, you don't have dismembered fingers playing the piano in a well, actually, you do in a comedy. But really good Goosebumps story. Piano lessons can be murder. The climax involved disembodied hands playing the piano. And it was really cool, except even that one had a saner reason, a saner execution for it, even on Fox Kids, compared to what we just witnessed here.
Like I said, I believe he consulted with a bunch of very young kids to ask what was scary.
Well, actually, no, I'm being cruel. Actually, there was some spots where...
Yeah, there's some actually genuinely creepy moments in there.
Yeah, it did utilize very gorgeous atmosphere. I'll say there's a lot of amazing shots in this movie. As much as they abused the wind machine, I did kind of like how they wanted to give some kind of dreamlike atmosphere to kind of give the idea that even things that are in a beautiful dreamlike atmosphere can have a very dark edge to it. And there's a part of me going, I don't know if I'm watching here is absolutely brilliant or that the filmmaker just pretty much threw the noodles at the wall and so what stuck. It's hard to...
I think both those explanations are equally true.
I guess so. This was evidently done on something of a low budget, but at the same time, I can't even... That's what this movie's doing to me!
Yeah.
You're tearing me apart, House! The tone I guess this movie's going for, yeah, I guess associating with Scooby-Doo is not a bad way to go, except, let's face it, if the Scooby-Doo kids ever approached this, they probably wouldn't last long either. the way these kids do. I mean, it's evident in the way all the girls are pretty much resorted to archetypes.
Oh yeah, they're still completely one note.
Oh, extremely one note. They are pretty much exactly what
One
their name
eats,
entails.
One fights. One is pretty.
One is an intellectual. One is the...
And fantasy is the only one who can figure out what's going on. Because the whole thing is a fantasy.
Yeah, and I always admire a horror film that is willing to have the... spoiler, but to have the unhappy ending. Some really good ones always should have the foreboding idea that this evil is going to go on. It was in character with the film where I didn't really know how they could possibly resolve this in any kind of conventional sense. I even like how they tease you with the notion of, oh, kill the cat. No, that didn't do it either.
No.
And sometimes explanation like this can never be resolved in the conventional sense. And really, you can't think of any other way this can be resolved because the thing that this entity is waiting on is never going to come.
Nope.
And that's actually kind of foreboding. So it's one of those ones where the presentation is absolutely manic. When you actually put the story in your head and when you think about the presentation, it does kind of haunt you. It makes you wonder if maybe it's like this whole world is just the way these kids want to see the world. And then it just all of a sudden starts melting away and it becomes this madhouse. I mean, I'd say the standout death scene was hands down Melody's being eaten alive by a piano, and even seeing her pretty much being like consumed by it. I was like, that is probably the most horrible thing possible, to be killed by the one thing that defines you.
Yeah.
Like, and even at the very end, I guess Fantasy was the last one who was floating on the...
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even with Fantasy just floating away, it seemed like the house was wearing them out. It was kind of sapping them until the point where they just give into it in the very end. That being said, Death by Mattress was a particularly interesting one. Our prices are crazy. Here, sample this one. Here, sample this one. No, you didn't like that one. Here, sample this one. Here's our new orthopedic.
This is only the second time I've seen it. And the first time I did not realize just how prevalent the cat was.
Yeah. I actually noticed that. I picked that one up off. I guess, living with Big Trouble in Little China, you've met them, you tend to notice when a cat's in the room. So I did notice that. And I did kind of like the placement of the cat in certain angles, particularly when they do these pull-out shots. I remember a really great shot where it pulls out. As it pulls out, the cat reveals itself to be in the shot.
Yeah.
In a way, because the cat just seems to, against all odds and against all reality, turning up in random spots, it gives a hint of the idea that the cat is the eyes and ears of the house itself. And that was actually kind of a smart choice. The weird choice is some of the times when the cat jumps into frame where it's very evidently thrown. Woo!
And how they managed to keep the cat sitting still while they're sitting there petting it and doing all these things, and you can tell the cat doesn't want to be there, but it's still standing there.
I don't know. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's Blofeld's cat. Could very well be.
Could be. You were really expecting the aunt to have a monocle and
Actually, I did even kind of dig the aunt herself as just her presence. I kind of liked how they had her just kind of lingering in the background, just being very benign, and I kind of liked how very gradually you can tell that that there was something off about her. And I like they played that hand early, because you can kind of guess that there's something off about the aunt in the fact that she's very pleasant and very happy and seems very contented, living in a house that very clearly has not been tended to for a long time. That immediately tells you something's off. And I like how they just say, all right, you guessed it, all right.
Yes. And the fact that she couldn't maneuver through 3/4 of the house because she's in a wheelchair.
But then all of a sudden, pretty much as soon as the first one, the quote-unquote fat one, we're using that term very loosely.
She might have been 5 pounds heavier than the rest. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I look at her like going, what are you eating? Because frankly, I want some, because you're in better shape than I am. When she gets killed by the well, almost immediately she starts standing up. And
right.
That immediately I got the vibe, it's a kind of a parasitic house kind of thing like that. I've seen ideas where something living feeds off something else. As soon as I saw that, I picked up as to how this is going to go, where every single one of them are going to get picked off, and very gradually things become more, the core evil of this is going to strengthen more and more.
Yeah.
So I got that immediately. And it was also a particularly bold choice that they did not resolve certain arcs. Like, Gorgeous, I think, was the primary focus in the beginning, wasn't she? I found it interesting how it kicks off, and you think there's going to be a prominent arc in the whole thing about her being angry that her father was remarrying and how sad she was about the passing of her mother. I found it kind of bold that they don't really resolve that in any kind of conventional way. Just the final scene where the mother-to-be comes in, and it seems like the house just takes her to.
Yeah, that's
in the
the
very
impression I get.
The other arc, I'm just laughing that comes to basically nothing except bananas. It's just the pedophile teacher coming to quote unquote save the day, and then in the end gets taken down by a watermelon salesman. And gets turned into a pile of bananas, which, points for originality. I just kind of liked how it toyed with some kind of expectations on that.
Yeah, some guy was going to come and save the day.
Yeah.
No, that's not what happens here.
It was kind of neat to see that they were already kind of skewing some of the cliches that were going to become pretty inherent with the genre, even around that time. Actually, even before that. This was 2 years before Halloween, even.
Yeah.
So it's kind of impressive. Actually, no, 1 year. Halloween came out in 1978. So by and large, the presentation is definitely not what most horror fans would ever come to expect. And that is definitely to its benefit. But by God, if you didn't warn me and if we didn't watch the trailer beforehand, I would have been ill prepared for it. So I think in closing, closing thoughts.
It's batshit insane. Yeah, there's no other term for it.
No other way to
Yeah.
describe this movie. I might even be tempted to show it to Lynn afterwards.
Ooh.
The particular emphasis on cats will definitely delight her to no end.
Hope she forgives us.
I guess for me, I'm very delighted that I saw it, and as a lover of horror myself, it was refreshingly different in its execution compared to what I'm used to. So I'd say for any horror aficionado, you are going to enjoy it because it's definitely not. It's a traditional horror story, but executed in drastically different ways on a visual level and even on a tonal level. And I gotta say, to its credit, for as all the horrifying things that happened to these kids, I was kind of amazed that it was still able to maintain this cartoonish tone.
Yeah, in a way, it's almost a children's story in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I can't wholeheartedly recommend it. I like it for what it is, but it's not a oh my god, you got to go out and see this. It is worth watching. But
yeah, I think the only thing I could say, I recommend it really only for the really stalwart horror aficionados who are used to some things done a particular way, and this is a nice little thing to kind of knock them out of their comfort zone.
Fair.
I think that's the best way to describe it. So not on the menu, but definitely one worth a look anyway. And that's actually a first for us at Rare Delicacies, truth be told. So that's not a bad place to put it. In the meantime, Halloween is just kicking off.